This is my final presentation for environmental and occupational health. This is a student presentation using a hypothetical scenario. Hello, my name is Hannah Bryson. I work for the Arkansas Department of Health as an environmental health specialist. I've been asked to come here today to speak with you, the residents of Scott County, Arkansas, about benzene exposure. So we're going to go over what benzene is and how you can be exposed and then how it relates to Scott County. So here's a more specific overview. So again, I'm going to start out by explaining what benzene is, where it comes from, and where you can find it today. The pathways of which you can be exposed, whether through ingestion or inhalation or your work environment. We're going to go over the health effects, whether that be long-term or short-term. We're going to talk about some safety tips and preventive measures, ways to limit your exposure, and then again how benzene relates to Scott County specifically. So what is benzene? It's a chemical compound made up of carbon and hydrogen atoms. As you can see, I've listed the 3 different ways that the structure can be identified, and then it can be seen as a liquid or a gas. As a liquid, it is clear and colorless and is somewhat soluble in water. As a gas, it has somewhat of a sweet smell to it, and it evaporates quickly in the air. It is highly flammable, and it comes from natural and industrial sources, which we will talk about in the next upcoming slides. So where can I find benzene? You can find it in the air, the water, and the soil, and in consumer products. Now by consumer products, I'm talking about things that you use on a daily basis like adhesives, paints, and furniture wax. So where does it come from? Natural sources of benzene are gas emissions from natural events. Those events are volcanoes or forest fires. It can also come from gasoline and cigarette smoke. Now the industrial sources of benzene are from gas stations, the motor vehicle exhaust, or the disposal of products that contain it. Now it's used in a variety of different ways. Benzene was ranked in the top 20 chemicals used for production volume. So it's used in a variety of different ways, such as the production of styrofoam, synthetic fibers, rubbers such as tires, detergents, drugs, pesticides. Again, many things that most of us use on a day-to-day. How can I be exposed to benzene is probably what you're most concerned about. So you can be exposed through inhalation or ingestion. By inhalation, I mean breathing it in. So your lower levels of benzene are found in the outdoor air. This is due to gas, smoking, the motor vehicle exhaust, and other emissions from industrial uses, as we just talked about. But you will have higher levels outdoor areas in those places that use benzene at a higher level or more frequently, such as gas stations or vehicles or factories that use it in their productions. Now consistently you will have higher levels in the indoor air due to a confined space from those consumer products that we were speaking about before. To name a few more would be some glues and cleaning products. Now to ingest benzene, it would be in contaminated water such as well water or water that is stored underground in some type of storage facility. It would be contaminated from some type of hazardous waste that has been leaked into the water, and sometimes in contaminated food as well. Now a major source of exposure to benzene is in tobacco smoke. Another way to be exposed to benzene is in the workplace. So occupational exposure is something to also take into consideration. I've listed a few occupations here that run a higher risk of being exposed to benzene as compared to others. So factory workers, those who work in factories that deal with steel, rubber, or shoes. To be specific, tires that are made from rubber, those workers run a high risk because many of the products that go into making the tire and the rubber used contain benzene. Also, those who work in the printing and ink industry, firefighters, gas station workers, and laboratory workers as well. Health effects. So the acute exposure or short-term exposure presents in a different way than chronic exposure, which is from a long period of time. So if you've been exposed for a short period of time, you will notice neurological symptoms such as dizziness, headaches, or seizures, possibly irritation to the skin or eyes or wherever the benzene has been exposed to or made contact with. You may even see redness or blisters form. You can also present with vomiting. Now, chronic exposure is over a long period of time. Now, this can result in blood disorders. Now, benzene affects the bone marrow, which is the tissue responsible for making blood cells. So this is why the blood is affected, which results in blood disorders. It can also damage the immune system, which leaves you more capable of contracting other diseases or disorders or sicknesses and harder to get over them as well. Also leaves you with an increased risk of developing leukemia and changes to your chromosomes. The image that I've added here shows the difference between what a normal blood looks like and blood in a patient that has leukemia. As you can see, there is a decrease in the erythrocytes, which are your normal blood cells, and an increase in the lymphocytes. So this is just one example of how benzene can severely affect your internal body systems and your blood. Now, changes to your chromosomes, what I mean by that is a structural change or a numerical change. Now, most people know that changing to the chromosomes leaves you with a higher risk of developing some type of disease, disorder, or malformation. Risk management, reducing your exposure. So you want to limit your exposure at gas stations. You want to be sure you're not breathing in those fumes. You want to distance your residence area and the area where you keep your vehicles to separate that motor exhaust. You want to avoid the use of products containing benzene in the home. We spoke about those earlier, those cleaning products, those pesticides, detergents, rubbers. And then you do not allow smoking inside home or buildings, again, because tobacco smoke is the major exposure source of benzene. Now, in today's day and age, most buildings or establishments do not allow smoking inside, so that is a great way to reduce your exposure and a good advancement on their part. Now, education is also very important in risk management. You want to educate those around you and those in your community about benzene and how it presents in health effects and where they can be exposed and how. So you want to raise public awareness, such as what we're doing here today, going over all of these topics. Educational activities are also helpful. This could be looking into alternative consumer products that don't contain benzene and distributing those in your community. Some specific preventive measures at gas stations, you may look into those that have vapor recovery systems. These systems recover the gasoline fumes or other chemical fumes that may be in the area and trap them so they're not released into the atmosphere or breathed in by those around them. You also want to avoid skin contact with gas as it can become an irritant. With motor vehicles, you want to be conscious of your time spent around the running or idling vehicle, as that motor exhaust emits many harmful chemicals that, if breathed in over a long period of time, can become very dangerous to one's health. The image here that I have provided is a great representation of the different chemicals coming out of those exhaust pipes. If you take a closer look, you can see a few other than benzene listed there are nitric oxide, formaldehyde, and carbon monoxide, which again, most of us know these to be harmful chemicals. So what to do if exposed to benzene? If you're exposed to benzene for a short time, you want to exit the site of exposure immediately. You want to remove any contaminated clothing and dispose of it. You want to wash with soap and water to the area that was exposed thoroughly, and you want to seek medical attention to make sure you do not need to be treated in any way. Now, if you've been exposed for a long period of time or think you have, you want to see a doctor. They can run some tests to be sure that you have been exposed to benzene. They run tests to check your blood and your urine, and they can measure benzene even through your breath. Now, these tests will only confirm that you have been exposed to benzene. They will not be able to tell you if you will be suffering from any long-term effects such as leukemia or those other chronic health effects we spoke about earlier. Benzene related to Scott County. So in this section, I wanted to talk specifically about the smoking rate in Scott County and then in Arkansas as a whole. I wanted to speak about that because, as I've repeated throughout this presentation, tobacco smoke is the major source of benzene exposure. So to begin, in Scott County, the smoking rate in 2012 was 29%. So this was the average amount of smokers in Scott County. Now, thankfully, that decreased to 25% in 2017. But overall, in 2017, that's still higher than the Arkansas average, which was 22%. But overall, the whole state of Arkansas has seen a steadily decreasing smoker rate, as in 2017, like I said, it was 22%, but back in 2013, it was 26%. So hopefully we'll see that trend continue to fall as the level or rate of the smoking rate decreases, so does the benzene exposure. So if you have any questions, I have provided my email here at hbryson.uams.edu. I have also added the Arkansas Department of Health's phone number, as well as the Chemical Materials phone number and email. This is the department specifically within the Arkansas Department of Health that if you have any questions regarding chemicals, benzene, or any other kind that may be concerning, you can contact them and they have information available to you. Here I've provided the references used throughout this presentation. Some of the references I used were the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, the EPA, the World Health Organization, as well as the American Cancer Society, National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health Data. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you found this educational and are more informed about benzene and the health effects, and specifically benzene in Scott County, Arkansas.